Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the New Jersey State Library's webinar, Introduction to New Jersey Genealogy. My name is Andrew Dauphiny, and I am the Instruction and Outreach Librarian here at the New Jersey State Library. Our presenter today is Regina Fitzpatrick, our Genealogy Librarian. If you would like a copy of the slides from today's presentation, you can visit the link on the screen. Regina will also be showing you how to navigate to the Genealogy Research Guide shortly. If you have any questions, you can email me at adauphiny@njstatelib.org, or you can use the chat box in the menu to your right. If you do not see the menu, look for an orange arrow button in the top right corner of the screen and click on it to open the menu. Regina will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. If you would like to contact her specifically, you can find her email at the bottom of the screen. If you have any technical issues, please let me know and I will try to resolve them. At the end of the presentation, you will be prompted to complete an evaluation. So if you could do that, we would greatly appreciate it. This session will be recorded and I will be sending out a link to it once it has been posted online. Now that we have gone over all the housekeeping, it is my pleasure to introduce Regina Fitzpatrick, Genealogy Librarian at the New Jersey State Library.
Andrew, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Welcome everybody. Hold on just one second. I'm navigating to my screen and then I'm going to share my screen with you. So very quickly, before we get into the presentation, I just want to show you how to get to the Genealogy Research Guide and the slides we'll be using for the program. I pretty much designed the slides for this session to be, they're packed with information basically, and I want you to be able to slowly digest them later. So the slides will be useful for you as you're thinking about, you know, what we've discussed today. So from the New Jersey State Library's website, you can navigate to the Genealogy Research Guide. You can go right to our URL, which is up on the screen there, or you can just Google New Jersey State Library, and the homepage should be one of the first results in Google. So once you're on the library's homepage, if you click on the Research Library drop-down menu, and go down to research guides, we have an alphabetical listing of all of our research guides, which have been prepared by reference librarians and are filled with information. They're in alphabetical order, and here's the genealogy guide. If you go into the Guides and Handouts tab, you'll find the Introduction to New Jersey Genealogy slides, and if you click on this link, it should open the PDF version of the slides for you. And then you're able to save and download copies over in this corner over here. Here's the download button, and you can save a copy to your computer. I have several other useful guides and handouts, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And they work the same way. They'll download in PDF version, and then you'll be able to you'll be able to save copies to your screen. Okay. That said, let us then go into the PowerPoint presentation. Let me go to the slideshow and we will get started. Okay, before we begin, I just wanted to warn everybody that the presentation is going to take the full hour. I've tried to pack as much information into this presentation as I can, and mostly in the slides, as I said, because, you know, I want you to have the information written down so that you can digest it more slowly lately. I've presented this class a few times before, once as a webinar and once as an in-person class. However, because things are updated and things have changed, the State Archives has some cool new resources that I wanted to share with you. I know that Family Search has recently changed its microfilm loaning policy and is going digital, and now you need an account to log in, stuff like that. So I wanted to update the presentation a little bit and just give you a little bit more information. So as I said, I intend this presentation, I'll be throwing tons and tons of information at you. And I would advise against taking frantic notes because you will have the slides. So that is good. I want to make sure, as I said, that you have the most accurate and up-to-date information about New Jersey genealogy. So that's why we are updating the class now. And we will do future updates of this class and rerun it, as changes become more and more prevalent. And I do, in between offering this particular class, I do try to keep the information on the genealogy research guide that we just saw as up to date as humanly possible. So with that said, let's begin and dive into our introduction. What I would like to do in this presentation is briefly discuss, some genealogy basics and then dive into the New Jersey research specifically. So that's what we'll be doing today. So a little bit about New Jersey. We have European settlements that date back to the mid-1600s, which means that we have records spanning over 300 years. We are the second state in the union to implement a continuous system of vital records. Massachusetts beat us by 7 years, I think. So we have about 169 continuous years of vital records, which is really cool and very useful. I read somewhere, and I wish I could find this statistic again, that by 1930, New Jersey residents, overwhelmingly, I think it was close to 50% of New Jersey residents, were related either first or second generation to an immigrant of some sort. So the vital records era, which began in May of 1848 for us in the state of New Jersey, is very relevant to genealogical research for many of us, which is why we'll spend a lot of time talking about vital records in this particular presentation. So we are going to review basics of genealogy. We'll look at how to plan your repository trip, and then we are going to talk about some specific resources and collections, both here at the New Jersey State Library and over at the New Jersey State Archives. So let us dive in. So genealogy is the study of a continuous line of descent from a single individual, you, and you are going backwards from you to your parents, to your grandparents, to your great-grandparents, and so on and so forth. Your goal, in a very basic sense for genealogy, is to collect a birth, marriage, or death record, which are also called vital records, starting with you and then working your way backwards through generations and backwards through life events. So for everybody you research, you are always going to start with a death and work your way forward to their birth. Sometimes this process can be incredibly straightforward. You can look in an index, you can do a quick Google search, and you can find a vital record very easily. Other times, it is not so simple, because either the record collection is more difficult to navigate or to find, or because somebody has a very difficult to spell name. You have a date wrong, you have a location wrong. So these are all things that can throw off your searches. So there are two document types that will help you to locate these vital records, these births, marriages, and death records: primary documents and secondary resources. Primary documents are official or private records created within a person's general lifetime. So these are record collections that you think of in a very traditional sense when you're visiting, an archive or a historical society repository. And they include things like vital records, estate documents, which include wills, land records, naturalizations, and private correspondence. These are what you want to focus on when you're doing your genealogy research, because the informant who gave the information for the record is likely the person of interest themselves, or someone who knew them. And thus we assume that the information is going to be more accurate. Many of these items are located in records repositories such as state, county, or municipal archives and historical society. The state library has a smaller primary documents collection, which includes our city directories, which are highly useful and we'll talk a little bit about later, and federal and state census records. The state archives, who is our next door neighbor and are a separate entity from the state library, has the official primary documents for the state of New Jersey almost exclusively. Here at the library, we are an official depository for published New Jersey State Agency reports. However, the archives has the records collections. They also have the published reports many times, but they have the actual records that are produced for various state agencies, which is why they have things like wills and vital records in their collection. So they are going to be your go-to first spot, the state archives. So what I did here is I tried to create a little visualization of how you can use other records collections to locate a birth, marriage, or death. And just as a very quick example, if you were trying to find a birth event and you went to an index and you could not locate the child's name or the birth date or any likely possibilities, what you could do is you could check the federal population censuses to narrow down when a child may have been born. You could also work from the parent's marriage date if you're looking for the eldest child and try to guess within 9 months when the child's birth date may have been. You could look at naturalization records depending on when the child was born, because some of the later post-1906 naturalizations will list children on a parent's application. You could look at the person whose birth you're looking for, their death record for an exact date of birth. You could look at a military pension record if the person was a veteran, especially sometimes in Revolutionary War, but especially in Civil War pensions, they'll usually have the date of birth of the applicant. And divorce records, either for the person themselves or for their parents. Divorce records sometimes list children, and especially if you're going into the 20th century, they may list the birth dates of the children as well. So that's just a quick example of how you can use other primary documents collections in order to narrow down or try to get an exact date of birth for someone. You can do the same thing with a marriage or a death record as well. So the other record group are called secondary resources. These are published items that are generally produced a long time after a person's death. The person who created the secondary resource usually did not know your ancestor of interest and may or may not have relied on primary documents for research, so we don't know where their information is coming from. Some examples of secondary resources are primary documents indexes, family histories, and town histories. Many repositories, libraries, and historical societies keep a collection of secondary resources. The New Jersey State Library has quite a large collection of these materials. Family histories and town histories became very popular in the 19th century. So many of the items produced are out of copyright coverage. So many of these published books are now digitized and available online on subscription sites like Ancestry and Heritage Quest, and also freely available on the web on resources like Google Books and archive.org. Because things were produced a long time ago, and we are not certain of the scholarly rigor, shall we say, that went into producing these, you may want to be skeptical about the contents and the information presented in family and town histories. Their information might be inaccurate. That's not to say they're not a valuable or a good place to start if you need clues, especially if you're working outside of the vital records era in New Jersey, which began in May of 1848. But use the resources, but just kind of don't expect all of the information to perfectly line up the way you might think it would. So be skeptical. And as I said, secondary resources, because as we go backwards in time from the 21st century, the types of collections and the information that they offer change. So secondary resources can be particularly useful for people working outside of the vital records era. So anything before May of 1848, because it may lead you more easily into the available primary documents collections. So I bring this up, planning a repository visit, specifically because everybody kind of expects all of these records to be digitized and online on Family Search and Ancestry. This is generally the case, and it's becoming more and more common. However, many repositories are still not digitizing their collections, and one of the big ones that it's not doing that is the New Jersey State Archives, which is where you're going to find the primary documents for the state of New Jersey for the most part. So it's important to plan ahead for your visit to an organization like the State Archives so that you can spend your time playing with the records that they have that are not available remotely, rather than, you know, doing all your research on the computer there on Ancestry or Heritage Quest or Family Search. So one of the things that is really important is to have a goal for your trip. Make sure you know and are clear with yourself which family members' records you are trying to get. Make sure that you do your homework ahead of time. So do all of your census research and anything else you need to do that we'll discuss in a minute at home, rather than trying to do it at the archives and, you know, and getting to spend less time with the records collection. And then once you have your homework done, make sure you make a laundry list of the records that you'd like to get. So here's your homework that you want to do at home or at your local public library before you come into the state archives. Go on Ancestry and look at the federal population census records. You can use these records to narrow down timeframes for the events you're interested in. And this is especially true if you're looking in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And for those of you who did not know, the state of New Jersey also did state censuses, which began in 1855. All of these are now digitized on Ancestry. And 1905 and 1915 are digitized on Family Search. So the New Jersey state census are on the 5 years, so 1855, 1865, 1875, whereas the federal census records are 1850, 1860, 1870. So checking the New Jersey state censuses can really help you narrow down to a 5-year window rather than a 10-year window for events that you're looking for. And the 1885 census is invaluable because, as many people know, the 1885 and 1895 actually, as many people know, the 1890 census was mostly destroyed by fire. So if you check the 1885 census and the 1895 census, that can really help you narrow down timeframes too. And whereas if you were just working with the federal census, there is a 20-year gap between 1880 and 1900. So in addition to doing your census homework, go on the repository's website. Specifically, the state archives has a bunch of databases. They have a few digital collections, mostly photographs. And they also have a searchable online catalog. So you can go into these collections, searchable databases, searchable online catalogs, and locate your specific resources or specific collections that you'd like to work for. We will be talking in detail about the marriage and death indexes available on the archives website, which are highly useful and an awesome thing to check, even if you are going in person to the archives, because you can get exact dates, exact citations, and you're ready to go once you get there. Make sure once you've done your homework, once you've visited their site, once you've done all of your census homework, any other digital collections you want to check on Ancestry or Family Search or on Heritage Quest, make sure you're building a repository-specific laundry list of records that you'd like to collect. And make sure that you put any citations. So if there is a specific collection that's named in, the archives catalog that you would like to look at, if you see a call number or control number, you can write that down. If you go into one of the database indexes and the specific item you're interested in has a page and volume number, something like that, make sure you're writing that stuff down. Funny story, one time I was working, for those of you who don't know me, I used to work at the state archives, so I'm very familiar with the collections there. A gentleman came in and I was on duty in the manuscript room, and he had built a nice little laundry list for himself, and he had gone on our website. He had determined that we had a specific collection of private papers. This is very unusual for the state archives because the archives is a repository for state government records. But they do have a very small collection of private records as well. So he handed me the reference and I went in the catalog to look it up and I could not find it. I checked, we had a guide to our private records. The family name was not in the alphabetical listing. And finally, I asked to see his specific citation that he had. He turned his list around to show me, and at the top of his list, instead of New Jersey State Archives, it said New Jersey Historical Society. So the laundry list that he had brought with him was for the Historical Society and not for the state archives. So it's really good to create your repository specific list and then make sure you label it at the top. So that way too, if you pull out the wrong list, at least you know where you need to go to get the item of interest you're looking for. So I just wanted to show you a very quick example of a laundry list. This is very basic. Some people can build very elaborate laundry lists, and some people can just even write things down. But what I've done here is I've grouped particular records together, and I've put them in descending chronological order. I've made sure that each person that I'm looking for is clearly identified. And I've grouped records that are in the same collection together. So all of the births are together, all of the marriages are together, and all of the deaths are together. And this can be something really useful if you're going with a group of people and you'd like to divide and conquer. Somebody can do all the births, somebody can do all the marriages, somebody can do all the deaths. And that way you have more time to play with more records, and you can get more on your laundry list done. So this is just a very quick example of how to do a very basic laundry list. And as I said, you can get more elaborate, you can get even less elaborate. You can do this on a piece of paper, but just make sure that you have something like this going into an organization like the archives that doesn't digitize their collections on a repository that you have remote access to. Okay, so we are going to talk specifically now about some of the collections that are available at the state archives. The vital records, because as I said, most of you are very likely researching at some point during the vital records era, which started in May of 1848. And when you are in the vital records era, your primary focus should be on getting a birth, a marriage, or a death certificate for your person, because that is going to have the most accurate and authoritative biographical information that we are able to offer in the state of New Jersey. Estate records are also very important because if the estate record includes a will, it will link the deceased to their family. It will tell you about familial relationships, friendships, neighbors, all kinds of very useful information about that person and their life. So it's another very useful collection. These are two of the most far-reaching collection. As I mentioned in the beginning, we, as in the state of New Jersey, have been continuously collecting vital records since May of 1848. And the estate records started in the 17th century. I think one of the earliest one at the archives, and this is pretty cool, is actually in Dutch, and it was written, I believe, before the British took over New Jersey as a colony. So we will talk about vital records first. Again, this is probably going to make your head spin. So please don't feel like you have to have all of this memorized, or that, we at the library or at the state archives expect you to be able to waltz in there, go straight to the microfilm cabinets, and we'll just know what you're doing. Please remember you have the slides available so you can more slowly digest this information later. And that staff members both at the state library and over at the state archives are here to help you, and we do not expect you to be experts from attending one webinar about New Jersey genealogy. So the vital records are probably the most authoritative source for personal information on your ancestors. And this is, like I said, with the primary documents, because very likely the person themselves or a close family member was the informant on the document. So we're expecting the information to be more accurate. Currently, any vital record, any New Jersey state vital record that is at least 100 years old or older, all the way back to May of 1848, are available at the state archives. The archives owns all of these records. And if you are out of state, that means that you can order them remotely. We'll be talking a little bit more about the archives website. There are searchable indexes, as I mentioned, on the archives website for marriages, which cover May of 1848 to May of 1878, deaths, May of 1848 to May of 1878, and deaths, June of 1878 to June of 1897. You can search these indexes directly and place your orders from there. There is not a searchable online index for every single vital records collection yet, because the state archives, like many other library-like facilities, is understaffed. They are very slowly putting together these index collections. When I first started working there back in 2004, one of my very first projects was being put on a death index and transcribing the information into a database, which turned into the database that went online. And they're still not completely finished because the death indexes go up to December of 1900. Now, Family Search has taken the microfilmed indexes, which are based on the book indexes, which the state archives owns, and they have created searchable indexes for New Jersey birth, marriage, and death record, which includes all vital records from May of 1848 to December of 1900. These are the vital records, again, that are available at the state archives. So just because the archives doesn't have an available index, an available online index for the vital records, there are other places that you can go to search New Jersey state vital records and see if you can locate an event before requesting a search from the state archives. Ancestry has also recently digitized New Jersey state birth, marriage, and death indexes from 1901 to 1903. So you can look those up online. Now, these are just the indexes. Everything on Family Search and Ancestry and on the archives website, what you are seeing is an index entry. You are not getting to see the certificate record. So those records are not digitized, but the indexes are in certain places. And then very usefully, Reclaim the Records has digitized the New Jersey state marriage indexes from 1901 to 2016. So you can even find recent marriages. And I have the links to the Family Search Vital Records Indexes and archive.org up on the Genealogy Research Guide. I don't have the links to Ancestry up because it's a paid subscription site. So you'll just have to go in and navigate to those collections, and we'll talk about that a little bit further in the presentation. So the vital records, May of 1848 to December of 1900, are, I would say, probably a pretty big bulk of the vital records requests that that people are looking for. The earliest vital records, which are from May of 1848 to May of 1878, are ledger records rather than certificate records, which means your person's birth, marriage, or death record is just a line on the page. And there will be several other entries on that same page rather than an individual certificate record. These particular records, the earliest, were organized on a May to May fiscal year rather than on a calendar year. There are 2 online indexes on the archive's website. The marriage index from May of 1848 to May of 1878, and the death index from May of 1848 to May of 1878. If you go to the archive's website, you may order the records straight from these 2 indexes online. Now, Family Search has the searchable birth index from May of 1848 to December of 1900. They also have the marriages and deaths as well, but because you can order the records straight from the indexes on the State Archives site, always go to the State Archives site first if you have an event, a marriage or death event that occurred within these time frames. In addition to searching the Family Search Index or the online indexes, the archives has book indexes from May of 1848 to May of 1878. After May of 1878, the vital records change to a slightly different fiscal year, and they change format, so they become certificate records, which is very nice. And the fiscal year starting in June of 1878 and going to December of 1900 is a July to June fiscal year. So for example, a fiscal year would be July of 1888 to June of 1889. There is a June of 1878 to June of 1897, and this is a death index in progress, death index, which is available on the archives website. So again, if you have an event, a death event that occurred between June of 1878 to June of 1897, use the index on the archives website first, because you can order the records straight from there. There's another reason which we will briefly discuss momentarily. Book indexes for births and marriages and microfilmed indexes for deaths are also available at the archives for in-person use. Okay. So this is the archives homepage. And if you want to navigate to these searchable databases, these 3 searchable vital records databases, you can either click on the picture to the right of the circled text, which will take you into the searchable online databases. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Can I go back? You can also click search the collections and go in that way, but it's much easier to navigate to the databases just by clicking that that picture. Here is the Family Search homepage. Those of you who are familiar with Family Search and Ancestry will know that that when you do a very basic record search, you can get just a ton of results that may or may not be helpful. So rather than using the basic search to locate records, I go into the catalog specifically. And if I specifically want to search these vital records indexes, that include the New Jersey State Vital Records on Family Search, I'm going to go into the catalog. The screen on the left-hand side, the lower left here, will appear. Under place name, you start typing in New Jersey. United States, New Jersey will pop up. You click that, and then you will get an alphabetical listing of all of the collections belonging to the Family History Library. Many of these collections are now digitized online. So you can see that there is a New Jersey Vital Records Indexes subset of collections. And if we click on the drop-down menu here, we can access the New Jersey births, marriages, and death indexes separately. I would highly encourage you, if you are searching specifically for a birth, marriage, or death event within the Vital Records era within the state of New Jersey that doesn't match the marriages May of 1848 to May of 1878, the deaths 1848 to 1878, or the deaths June of 1878 to June of 1897, I would highly suggest that you come in here, you go to the catalog, and you navigate specifically to these individual indexes here, because you will get much more precise results, and it will take the noise out of your results list. So that's what I would highly recommend that you do. But as I said again, and I will say zillions of times, if you have a marriage or death that falls within to the time frames, May of 1848 to May of 1878, or June of 1878 to June of 1897, check the indexes on the Archives website first. Now, just very briefly about Family Search. Family Search decided to discontinue their microfilm loaning program. I'm sure many of you know about this, because they want to make everything they can available digitally via FamilySearch.org. So they instituted a new policy where you have to sign in with a free account in order to use the records collections. So just know that if you're planning on using Family Search and you're not familiar with it, you're going to be asked to create a free account before you search, and before it will let you see any records. That's the new policy. You'll see it's very easy to do. You'll see there's a little sign-in button up at the top. You just click that, and it will walk you through registering. And then once you're in, you'll have the same access that you would to the old site. Now, if you are, some of the digital collections will only be available to Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints members, or they will only be available at local family history centers or family history center affiliates. The State Archives is a family history center affiliate. So you can go to these places to get access to certain digital collections that they don't let just anyone see. So if anybody has any questions about, Family Search and this change, we can discuss that at the end of the presentation. So I don't want to go over this in too much detail, but I do want you to be aware that in Family Search, you have to be very careful about dates when you pull information about the state records from any of their searchable indexes. What happens is, I've said this, the State of New Jersey's vital records collections are organized on a fiscal year, so either May to May or July to June. So Family Search, when they took and built these indexes, created an amalgamation of the state records plus church records and vital record information from other repositories. And they decided that unilaterally these indexes would be organized on the calendar year. So what they did when they shoved the state records into these other records collection is they took the first part of the fiscal year and made that the year for the entire fiscal year. So if you had records, for example, from July of 1896 to June of 1897, even though some of the events from January to June were in the year 1897, they were labeled as 1896 because it was the first year in the fiscal year. So just be careful and be aware of that the year of your event in a Family Search index, if it happened between January or June, may be a year off. This is why it's very important to check the state archives website first and use their vital records indexes first, because you're going to have an accurate date. Whereas you may not, depending on what time of the year the event occurred in Family Search. Well, again, just to be clear, I do not expect you to remember all of this. I do not expect you to be an expert. People at the library, people at the archives can help you with this, but I wanted to make sure that you had this information so that you know when you're looking at Family Search to be cautious and be careful. So just as a very quick example, we have Mr. Applegate, who died April 11th, 1885. We see that in his Family Search, in the Family Search Death Index, his date of death is listed in 1884 because the fiscal year was July of 1884 to June of 1885, and they took the first year listed in the fiscal year and used that to cover all dates within the fiscal year. So if you have a person that died between June of 1878 and June of 1897, use the archives website. You will be able to order the record straight from there, and the date will be accurate. However, in Family Search, there is a way to check what the correct date is, and that's by using the GS film number, which is the unique identifier assigned to every single roll of microfilm that the Family History Library filmed. The red arrow down here points to the GSU number, and if you use the catalog in Family Search, there's a film fiche number function. You can plug it in. You'll get the collections, which are the microfilmed copies of all of the New Jersey vital records indexes that are owned by the Family History Library. And if you scroll down, what you can do is use the Control F function, and you can find the individual roll of microfilm, and you can verify the fiscal year. So this confirms that Mr. Applegate died in the July of 1884 to June of 1885 fiscal year. He died in April. It was 1885. And so that's how we know what the correct date is. Again, this is all in the slides. It is all available to you. If you don't understand or it's too much for you to process, just know that the date might be off in the family search indexes, and there is a way to check it. And people at the archives and those of us here at the library are happy to double check and help you figure out what the correct date is. But for those of you who can parse and process and can go through all of this from the notes, it's there for you in the slots. Okay, now things get much, much less confusing after all of this, because finally, starting in 1901, we get certificates that are organized by calendar year. Yay! We are very happy about this because it's so much easier to navigate and to process. So the 1901 to 1903 records have their own index by certificate number, which is available on microfilm at the state archives. Remember, Ancestry has also taken the same index and digitized it for the birth, marriage, and death collections 1901 to 1903. Now, after 1903, things get really easy because starting in 1904, birth, marriage, and death events are organized within the calendar year in alphabetical order by the person's last name. Marriages are organized by the groom's last name. So whenever somebody has 20th century records or relatives within this time period, I always advise them to start with the records 1904 and on, because these are the easiest to use and easiest to navigate. If you go to the archives, you can practice on these. You can get familiar with the microfilm machines this way. And you know, all you need is the year, and if you already have the exact date of the event, you're all set. So the archives owns the vital records currently. Remember, I said they own all vital records that are 100 years old and older. And they currently own all of the records 1904 to 1917. So if you had a birth, marriage, or death event that occurred before 1918, and you are not in a position to go to the archives in person, you can order those records remotely. Every January, when all of the vital records in a single year turn 100, that they're owned, anything less than 100 years old is owned by the Department of Health Bureau of Vital Statistics. But when all of the records within a calendar year turn 100, they're transferred ownership to the state archives. So each January, the archives acquires another year of vital records. So every year is one more year that you can order remotely from the state archives. As a courtesy to researchers, the Department of Health has very kindly given the archives additional vital records on microfilm to be used in person only at the state archives. The archives has through 1923 on microfilm for births, 1948 for marriages with a bride's index, and 1955 for deaths. Again, if you call the archives and you say, oh, I'm in California, I really need this 1922 birth for my grandma Mary, the archives will not be able to help you. You must go in person in order to use these records. The bride's indexes are alphabetical by her last name, so her maiden name. These are microfilms starting in 1901. This is very useful because many of the bride's index up until I think it's 1936, they start going year by year. They're usually in 5-year chunks. So if you're not quite sure what the marriage date was, this can really help you. 1901 to 1903 has its own brides index. 1920 to 1929, for some reason, they made a 10-year chunk. And then 1936, their single year. So these can be very useful if you're not sure of the time. And also sometimes the groom just has a very difficult to spell last name, and maybe the bride's name is very easy to spell. So it may be easier just to look her up first. Again, Reclaim the Records has posted on archive.org 1901 through 2016. These are both bride and groom indexes, so that's very useful. Ancestry has the 1901 to 1903 birth, marriage, and death indexes, which are also available on microfilm at the state archives. And the brides indexes are also digitized on Ancestry 1901 to 1914. Again, I have the links to Reclaim the Records posted on the Genealogy Research Guide, so you can navigate straight to all of the indexes on archive.org from there. So that is the vital records. The estate records are in two collections at the archives. The Secretary of State's wills and estate papers, which date from the mid-1600s up to 1900s, and the 20th century wills, which are from 1901 to 1952. The probated state records document types include things like wills, inventories, administrations, and guardianships. And wills, of course, are what you really want because they display kinship relationships, and, you know, it kind of gives you a good idea of the sort of possessions that your ancestors had. And every single type of probated estate records, even if you're disappointed because the person died intestate and only has an inventory, will give you a date when the estate was probated, and that's incredibly useful because that can help you narrow down a death date to within a year, because generally the will is probated within the same year that the person died. And so this could help you if you're searching for a vital record. In the 20th century, some estates, in fact, many of them, simply give you the person's exact date of death right in the estate documents. So that is incredibly useful. For relatives who died before the vital records era, pre-May of 1848, this might be your starting point to discover their exact date of death. Secretary of State's wills, there are two publications. Both of these are available in book format, both here at the State Library and over at the State Archives, and they're digitized online in numerous places. The Index of New Jersey Wills, which has all of the records through 1900, and the New Jersey Archives Series Calendar of New Jersey Wills, which are the will abstracts of the earliest wills. This can be incredibly helpful to you if you have trouble reading the colonial handwriting, or two, if a document is very faded or damaged. This might be a good way to help you determine what's in the document if the copies that you're sent are difficult to read. They're digitized, as far as I know, on Ancestry. I've seen them on Google Books and on archive.org. So you have multiple places to go to get copies of these. If you ever have a question about an individual will, you can always contact us here at the library or over at the archives as well, and we're happy to double check the indexes for you and see if we can find an entry with a citation for you so that you can order the record. There is a card catalog index. Unfortunately, there is no other index for this collection for the 1901 to 1952 wills, which is available for in-person use over at the state archives. If you can't find anything in the state documents and your relative died after 1790, make sure that you also check the county records. The county estate papers are held by the county surrogate's office, and many of the county offices have very kindly microfilmed their records and made them available for in-person use over at the state archives. So the state archives does have many of the indexes, at the very least, on microfilm, if not some of the county state papers. And you might be surprised at what you might find. Some of the county records are pretty excellent. So I highly recommend checking that out. And then to switch gears from the primary documents to the secondary resources, here are some of the useful materials that we have here at the library. Our book collection is quite extensive. The archives focuses on the state of New Jersey and index and secondary resource materials for the state of New Jersey. However, the state library, our book collection goes beyond that. We have a massive family history section, which makes up about a third of our genealogy collection. We have secondary resources for localities that are not New Jersey, such as other states, other countries. We have ethnic resources, such as, the European ethnicities, African American resources, Native American resources, things of that nature that may help you with any genealogy that you're doing on those particular groups. And in addition, we have quite a good 20th century New Jersey newspaper collection and a very comprehensive city directories collection, which can also help you kind of narrow down where a person was at a particular time, and that's year by year. So it's not a 5 or 10 year window like the census is. Our catalog is online, and you can use this to search for newspapers and books. Our city directories have their own separate catalog. This is all freely available at the State Library's website. And I also have links to the catalog and to the city directory's catalog through the Genealogy Research Guide. The publications that I think are highly useful are mostly indexes to primary documents or transcriptions of them. Our Brothers Gone Before is a great Civil War resource. The two gentlemen who wrote the book went around to New Jersey cemeteries and looked for Civil War veterans and transcribed their tombstones and then cross-referenced them through strikers. So the entries will have whatever information was on the tombstone, so that could include both birth and death dates, possibly, wives' names, and also cross-referencing with strikers so you know where the individual served. This is a great resource for people who survived the war and died, went home to New Jersey and died. Unfortunately, it does not include those who were buried outside of the state of New Jersey. So I like this particular resource because it gives you a little bit more information than Stryker's index does. The Revolutionary War pension records are digitized and up on Heritage Quest. And this is everything. The pension records, as you may know, are federal records. But but I really like White's resource because it abstracts the information that you'll find in the pension records. And also, if somebody is a little bit uncertain about searching Heritage Quest or playing with Heritage Quest, this is a really great resource because it will give you the pension number. And then you can go straight to the National Archives or go to Heritage Quest and then feel comfortable looking up the information. The Index to New Jersey Wills, which I just discussed, this is up online in numerous places. We also have the print copy here. And like I said, we're happy to go in and check an individual in this resource for you to see if we can get you a citation so that you can order the records from the archives. And this is, of course, very useful because it will give you the year that the estate was probated, which is very likely the year that somebody died. And the Index to the Genealogical Magazine of New Jersey and the Genealogical Magazine of New Jersey issues themselves are highly useful because they contain transcribed historical records, which members went around and, harangued various historical societies, churches, and cemeteries into letting them transcribe their records, and then they were all published here. So it has very good information, and this is a really great place to start if you have ancestors who lived outside of the vital records era who you are trying to research. So if you want to navigate to the library's catalog, if you scroll down to the bottom of the main page of the State Library's website, which is www.njstatelib.org, there's a little box that says Catalog Searches and Tools. If you click on the second tab here, that will allow you to just specifically search the State Library's catalog. You can either do your search right here. You can type in a title or an author name or a subject if you want to and click search, or you can enter the catalog proper by clicking on the advanced search link. This will take you into a search screen where you're able to restrict to just the genealogy collection, which is very useful. And you can search the genealogy collection for a particular family, a particular author, or a particular title. We at the State Library also have numerous useful online resources. Most of the databases that I will discuss below are accessible in person by members of the public with their state library card or a guest pass if you are out of state. If you are a state employee, a Thomas Edison State University faculty member or a student, you can access some of these remotely. Ancestry is our one genealogical database, and most public libraries do this as well, where you must come into the building in order to use the resource. You can't access it remotely. If you can't get to the state library, it is very, very likely that your local public library has an Ancestry subscription. They may also have a Heritage Quest subscription as well. So, again, Heritage Quest has the scanned Revolutionary War pension files. They do also have many digitized town and family history books. However, since Ancestry took over Heritage Quest and managing the interface, I found that, like when you do a regular Ancestry search, the search results are less precise. So unfortunately, I found the Searchable Town and Family History Books collection less useful over time because it now just pulls up such irrelevant results. But they do have them available. which can be incredibly useful. And Family Search, of course, is digitizing everything. They are working with the New Jersey county offices, including the county clerks and the county surrogates offices. They have digitized their county marriage collections, which differ from the state vital record marriage collections. So you can access those on Family Search. They have the 1905 and 1915 New Jersey state censuses, and they have the New Jersey Vital Records indexes, which include the state vital records from May of 1848 to December of 1900. Ancestry, of course, has numerous digitized primary documents collections. I do not like using the basic search on Ancestry. I like using the card catalog and searching particular individual collections. That way I'm getting way less noise and I'm getting results that I want. In the upper part of the screen, there's a black stripe, and the last little drop-down menu says New Collections. If you click that, it will take you into the card catalog proper, and you can search individual collections. I really like the censuses, the Vital Records indexes 1901 to 1903, and the Brides Index for New Jersey 1901 to 1914. And I also find the Social Security Death Index very useful, which covers 1935 to 2014. And I navigate to these particular collections and I search those particular collections rather than just doing a general search. We have a database called Newsbank, which has recent, and by recent I mean late 20th to early 21st century newspapers that generally go up to the present, available online, so you can do one-stop shop searching. In addition, within the Newsbank interface, we have the Historic Trenton Times database. So if you have ancestors or relatives who lived in the Trenton area or Mercer County in general from 1883 to 1993, this can be incredibly useful, especially for searching obituaries. And then, as I mentioned, we have quite a city directory collection, especially for the state of New Jersey. It is not listed in the regular library catalog. It has its own catalog, which you can access either from the library's homepage, or I have it linked directly on the genealogy research guide. So to navigate to the databases, you'll go into the Research Library tab. If you want to get to the City Directories catalog from here, you would click About Our Collections here. And then you would go to Genealogy and Local History, and you would see the link for City Directories. But to navigate to the databases such as Ancestry, Heritage Quest, and Newsbank, you would go into Electronic Resources, go into the databases, and then that will take you to a complete alphabetical listing of all of the New Jersey State Libraries databases that we subscribe to. What I highly recommend doing rather than browsing through alphabetically is using the databases by subject drop-down menu, clicking and selecting the genealogy databases. So that will give you all of the genealogy databases. I believe that Newsbank appears both under genealogy and under newspapers. So you can use both of those interchangeably. And then finally, I just want to talk a little bit about our research guides. These are guides that have been prepared by our reference staff here at the State Library to cover various subjects that people may be interested in researching. So this presentation is basically made up from the Genealogy Research Guide. And it has additional information, like there are many primary documents collections I didn't get to discuss, such as the naturalizations collection, which is highly useful. Information about New Jersey naturalizations is up on the Genealogy Research Guide. It includes what I have tried very hard to do, because many people are very confused about, you know, what is the New Jersey State Library? What is the New Jersey State Archives? Are they the same thing? Are they different? And I have tried to kind of separate us out and describe the State Library's holdings and the State Archives holdings, and indicate very clearly that we are separate entities and what you can find in each of our facilities. In addition, I've also included a section for the county offices, the county clerks and the county surrogate's office. They have land records, they have estate records, things like that, which are incredibly useful and genealogically relevant. So I wanted to make sure that they were also represented. And so there's a lot more information about what the county has in addition. And then our newspaper research guide is highly useful as well, because it has our complete newspaper holdings that we have here at the State Library. For both modern and historic papers, and we've got breakdowns of what we have for each county as well. We have links from this guide, the newspaper research guide, to our online databases, which we subscribe to, other online resources and reference materials that we have online or here at the library that are related to newspapers. To navigate to the research guides, we'll do what we did in the beginning of the presentation. We'll go into Research Library here, and we'll go down to Research Guides. When we click Research Guides, we will see an alphabetical listing of all of the available research guide. And so the genealogy guide is here, and the newspaper guide is there. And then here are the front pages of the genealogy research guide and the front pages of the newspaper research guide. And I've posted the URL here so you can copy and paste them directly from the presentation into your browser and navigate directly to them. You can bookmark the sites. So these are very useful resources. So just very quickly wrapping up, here is what I hope you took away from the presentation. Make sure that when you are doing genealogy that you are starting with yourself and you are working backwards. You are finding vital records, which are birth, marriage, and death records for each prior generation in order, you, your parents, your grandparents. When you go to visit the state archives, if you have family within the time period of the vital records era, start with the records 1904 and on. These are the records that are organized in alphabetical order by the person's last name within the calendar year. These are quickest, easiest to play with, and they will give you some familiarity with working with microfilm, working with the microfilm machines, and getting yourself familiar with the resources at the state archives. Make sure that you are doing work that can be done remotely, and not taking it to the archives with you for your visit. So use Ancestry and Family Search at home rather than coming into the archives and spending time on your visit playing with them at the state archives, because their collections are not digitized. So you're losing out on time playing with the records, spending time, doing your work on ancestry and family search. Make sure to always check the state archives digital online indexes. They've got the searchable indexes for marriages, May of 1848 to May of 1878, deaths, May of 1848 to May of 1878, and deaths, June of 1878 to June of 1897. If you have a marriage or death within these time frames, make sure you're using these indexes over the indexes that are available at Family Search, because the indexes that are on the archives website, the year will be accurate and you can order the record straight from the index. Ancestry has the New Jersey Vital Records Indexes, 1901 to 1903 births, marriages, and deaths, plus 1901 to 1914 brides indexes. They have the Federal Population Census Records. They have the Social Security Death Index and the 1855 to 1915 New Jersey State Censuses, all digitized and available online. So this is something that's highly useful for you to check before you come and visit the archives, and it's something that you can use remotely. Heritage Quest has the Revolutionary War pension files, which are especially useful, and also the digitized family and town histories. Family Search has an index which includes, well, I shouldn't say an index, it has indexes which include New Jersey vital records from May of 1848 to December of 1900. They also have the 1905 and the 1915 New Jersey state censuses digitized. Make sure that before you go and visit a repository, especially like the state archives, that you are checking their website, their digital collections, and catalog. Make sure you're building a laundry list of records you'd like to get and any relevant citations or information. Doing this will save you so much time before your trip. And finally, I hope I made this very clear. We really do not expect you to be experts from just a single hour-long PowerPoint presentation webinar. If you need any help or any instructions with your genealogy work, please talk to a state library staff member or a state archive staff member. We are here to help, and we are very, very happy to help. I can vouch for everybody over at the archives. I worked there cumulatively for about 6 years. They trained me in doing New Jersey genealogy, and the philosophy was always to treat everybody incredibly kindly and to help everybody as much as you can. You're not bothering us. It's what we're here for. Please ask us questions, and please don't feel like, you're asking us something dumb or stupid. You're not. We're here to help. So thank you very much, everybody. If you have any feedback at all about the genealogy research guide, about the presentation, things that you would like to see in the future, we can definitely do that. Remember also on the genealogy research guide, I do have some pre-recorded webinars. That's where this presentation is going to be loaded. We did record this particular session. Yeah, and that's it. Andrew?
Hi, Regina. So we do have some questions.
Okay, excellent.
So first, this is from Nancy. She says, according to a variety of records, including his death record, census records, and birth certificates for his children, my great-grandfather was supposedly born in New Jersey. I have not been able to locate a birth record for him, and I'm trying to figure out how to go about that when I don't know what city he was born in. Year of birth was about 1855 to 1857, and she's already checked at the New Jersey State Archives, and they do not have a record for him.
Okay. This is something, Nancy, I would prefer that you email me with this information and we can work privately, because if you've already checked for a birth record and it's not there, it becomes more complicated.
The next question we have is from Marilyn. She asked, where would we find the list of private records available in the New Jersey archives?
Okay, again, the New Jersey State Archives is a state repository. The private collection is tiny. There are not going to be a lot of family papers there. Most of the family papers they have because somebody was related somehow to the state of New Jersey government. So just know that, first of all. The state archives has actually, I don't think it's part of the digital catalog. It's a paper index to all of the private collections that's available for in-person use at the state archives.
All right, this question is two parts from Mark. The first part is, are the 1848 to 1878 ledger books at the archives on microfilm available to view the original entries in person?
That is something you would need to call the archives and see about. The microfilm copies are excellent. The books are incredibly delicate. So I don't know what their policy is going to be about viewing it. In general, when I worked there, the policy was no. What we would do is we could go in and we could transcribe a line if you were having difficulty reading it from the microfilm copy. But because the books are heavily used, it's much safer and it will preserve them longer if as few people as possible are touching them. So my advice is to call them at 609-292-6260, and somebody will be able to tell you whether or not you'll be able to see them definitively.
And the second part of that question is, what information is typically in those ledger books for each entry? For example, are parents' names listed for births?
Yes, usually. It's very similar to the certificate record. It's just a line on the page. Of course, as you go further through time, like on all records, the entries are more detailed. So you're a lot more likely to have more complete information on a 20th century record than you are on a mid-19th century record. But yes, for a birth record, usually the parents are listed.
All right, the next question is from Carrie. She asks, is there a bride index prior to 1901?
No, there is not. They only started doing the bride index in 1901. Otherwise, all of the indexes, okay, so here's the thing. Because there are the digital indexes, you can still search the bride's name. So if you're not sure of his name, because all of the indexes are digitized, either on Family Search or on the Archives website, you should still be able to search by her name. Also at the Archives, the May of 1848 to May of 1878 paper books, paper indexes that they have for that particular one. There are binders for both brides and grooms, so you can search that way in addition.
All right, the next question is from Annette. She asked, how are Secretary of State's wills different from the regular wills?
Well, the Secretary of State's wills are the regular wills. Those are Those are the wills for the state of New Jersey up to 1900. If you're asking what the difference between the county surrogate's wills and the Secretary of State's wills are, it's just where they filed it. The same material is included, but they were just filed in different locations. If you're talking about, there's not, just a little history lesson too. Wills in the state of New Jersey were filed with the Secretary of State's office up to December of 1900. After starting in 1901, Superior Court took over handling of estate filings rather than the Secretary of State's office. That's why there are two distinct record collections that we discussed, because 1901 to 1952 wills were filed with Superior Court. So I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-up questions about that, send me an email or give me a call, and I will do my best to explain, because I hope I'm trying to cover all my bases here to make sure I'm answering your question.
The next question is from Carolyn. She asks, what is strikers?
So William S. Stryker was the Adjutant General of the state of New Jersey during the Civil War, and it is thanks to him that we have such excellent military collections here in the state of New Jersey. Our Civil War collection for New Jersey residents is quite good, and also our Revolutionary War records are quite good because he worked so hard to preserve them. Stryker created indexes to the New Jersey State Revolutionary War records, which consists mostly of, a person's name and which militia or which part of the Continental Line they served with. He also created a separate index for the Civil War records. These are far more detailed. The archives has, so these books, before I say anything further, these indexes are published, so they're available in paper format. But in addition, they are also digitized as well. Stryker's Civil War Index in particular is searchable on both the state library's website and the state archives website. And since the state archives owns the Civil War military service records for the state of New Jersey, it's best to use the archives index online because then you can, it works just like the other databases we discussed during the presentation, where you can just go in, search the database, and then order the record straight from there.
All right. The next question is from Alexa. She asks, do you have any resources you suggest that are specifically oriented towards immigrant ancestors, even if more generally on the cultural aspects, particularly around the turn of the century, 1880 to 1920?
I don't have any particular resources that I usually recommend because there are numerous resources out there, and there are some very excellent ones that are specific to various ethnicities within the European ancestors. The best place, well, that's not true, because if it's right around the turn of the 20th century, the naturalization records themselves are not going to have a whole lot of personal information on them. But the state archives has the naturalization records, the county naturalizations over there, and you can get the information from there. Sometimes they provide you with very good locational information, where a person was born or where they came from. Other times, unfortunately, they don't. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have any specific recommendations for resources on doing immigrant research off the top of my head, because like I said, the ethnic books that we have at the state library are good and can be quite specific depending on which ethnicity you are looking to research and find information about.
Next question is from Carol. Where are the naturalization papers held, county, state, or federal?
It depends on what time period you're looking for. If you are looking from 1790s up until 1930s-ish, depending on the county, those are county records. Now, many of the counties have given or donated their records to the state archives for the state of New Jersey. So those are available there, and you can order them remotely depending on the county. I have information on the genealogy research guide that gives you all of the counties' naturalization records that are owned by the state archives. Others, they have the microfilmed copies over at the state archives, but you have to write to the county clerk's office or in order to get those particular records. And usually it's right around 1932 to 1936 that the naturalizations then switch over to federal. So then you're going to NARA for the naturalization records after that.
All right, the next question is from Pam. Besides the 1910 U.S. Census, what resources are available to assist with determining the whereabouts in New Jersey of a person between 1904 and 1920?
You could do the 1905 census and the 1915 census if you know where they were living based on the 1910 census. You could use city directories to see where they were living as well.
Next question is from Stacy. Are there divorce records pre-1845? I'm aware from records there was a separation, or was aware from records there was separation. Quote, according to records found at the Monmouth Historical Society, Rachel leaves Rodman in consequence of his bad treatment of her and his not providing for her.
Yes, there are divorce records prior to 1845. These are all chancery records, and they are over at the state archives. I would highly suggest that before you order, you call them, talk about what year you're looking for, and then the staff over there can assist you with placing your research request. Again, their number is 609-292-6260.
All right. Lucille asks, what records are available for businesses in the early 1900s?
So there are incorporation records. There are probably not going to be very many actual business records, like if you're looking for a specific employee or you're looking for pay records, or even if you're looking for board meetings. Those are private records. So again, the archives is probably not going to have them. However, the archives has incorporation records, which were filed with the Treasury Department. I can't remember when they start, but sometime in the mid 1800s, and they go up to about 1914. If the business incorporated after 1914, you need to contact the Department of Treasury at 609-292-9292, and they have the newer incorporation records.
All right, follow-up from Alexa. I have an ancestor that has a Civil War pension application, but isn't in the Stryker records when searched, and want to know would it be best to email you?
Yeah, you can email me. I would also contact the state archives directly because they have the actual records, and they know tips and tricks for locating difficult people. Also, depending on where he served, people didn't have to serve, even if they were living in New Jersey, they didn't have to serve in New Jersey regiments, especially if the person lived in a border county. They could have gone over to Pennsylvania or up to New York to serve, depending on where they lived.
All right, that is it, Regina.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. Like I said, Andrew and I have recorded the webinar, or Andrew did. I didn't do anything. And it will be up and available on our YouTube channel and on the genealogy research guide. If anybody has any further questions or feedback, please send me an email or give me a call. And I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions. Thank you.